When we were young, we read more often because we had to. It was the only way for us to get knowledge and to be enlightened. Read to your heart's delight and be enlightened. Let's just read. It's a podcast by Andy's Personal Development. Stay tuned for more reading and enlightenment. Hi, and welcome to this version of Let's Just Read. I am your host, Andy of Andy's Personal Development, and we are live, and we are so grateful and thankful to God for giving us this opportunity to come into your presence wherever you are, listening or viewing this podcast live on whatever network you're tuned into. We have a special guest today. Her name is Roni Robbins, and this episode is entitled Turning Family History into a Novel with Roni Robbins. So, let me tell you a bit about our guest. She has written the award winning novel entitled Hands of Gold, which capitalizes on her nearly 4 decades as a published writer, a staff reporter for daily and weekly newspapers, a freelancer for national, regional, and online publications. She has appeared in the Huffington Post, Forbes, the New York Daily News, Adweek, WebMD, and Healthline. She was a staff writer for Florida Today, USA Today, the Birmingham News, and the Atlanta Business Chronicle, American City Business Journals. Well, that's a lot, but so that we understand her background and her desire to really share the stuff that she's written, let's now introduce our guest live on Let's Just Read, Roni Robbins. Welcome, Roni.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
Wow, thank you for being with us, and we welcome you and we appreciate you. So, Roni, tell us a bit about yourself, your background, as far back as you can remember when you were growing up as a young lady. I firmly believe that the first 7 years of our lives is the most formulative. Some people remember, some don't for several reasons. But if you had to go back down memory lane, what could you recall about your life that has created the foundation for where you are now today?
Well, I would say, going back a long time, but I would say that I grew up in a very creative family. My father was, shocker, a blacksmith
Mm-hmm.
on Long Island, and he'll be the subject of my second book. And my mom was a silversmith. They were very artsy. Everyone was left-handed, which apparently means that you're creative. I am right-handed, but I inherited that creativity from them. So as far as I remember back, as far as writing goes, writing and reading were a big part of my life. Culture was also, the arts extend to performance. So we saw theater, in New York, and my parents took me to the orchestra, and they went to the opera. We were very culturally diverse. I played the violin. I was in the orchestra. I grew up around family. My family lived in New York. All the family mostly lived in New York. I grew up on Long Island, but my grandparents, the subject of my book, this book, Hands of Gold, is based on my grandfather's life in Europe before he came to America, and also in America, and the experiences that I had with them in New York. I learned about some of that with them, and the rest of it I learned from the cassette tapes that my grandfather left the family. So they also were very creative, and we were Jewish, and Jewish culture was a big part of our lives, and what we shared with them. And that's a big part of my life, and also in my book and in my work. It goes with you, who you are, makes you who you are today, I like to say. So the first inklings of creativity may have been that I like to write. My penmanship was very nice at the beginning. You know, you start the school year, your books are all fresh, your notebooks, and you start writing so beautifully. And by the end, it's a mess, right? But then I got into calligraphy and I wrote music. I was playing guitar, violin, and guitar. Guitar is much more cool than violin, I'm sorry to say. But I felt it was back then. So I learned guitar from this very attractive guitar teacher, which was probably the impetus for learning guitar. And I I like to write the lyrics, so I started writing
Mm.
lyrics, and then that became poetry, and then so there was a lot of physical writing and just experimenting with writing, and then I just liked English class. I'm weird that way. I liked English class. So there was all this brewing beneath the surface. Meanwhile, I'm also very involved in the Jewish community. So this is all feeding together into, the novel, of it, the eventual novel. And
Yeah.
it stayed under the current a little bit for my journalism, because I did end up being an associate editor of the Atlanta Jewish Times
Hmm.
after having been a reporter there. That's way too
Yeah.
much information for starters, but there you go.
Okay. So let's get down to the heart of the matter, Ronnie. In
Mhm.
terms of the book, um,
Yes.
I know that every writer, every author would have to do some level of research so that they could be sure the information that they put out there on that publication is real, it's factual, and if it's research by others who are reading it, they can find that information that says, yes, this is genuine, this happened. But I know that moving away from nonfiction as transitioning from journalistic to author, you'd also need to have permission from some people whose names are mentioned
Mhm.
in the publication. Did you have challenges with those two things, the research and getting permission? How did they react when you told them that you were going to write this book about family history?
That is a great question there, and very insightful. So I will tell you that yes, it was a challenge, and that is why I'll start with the second part of your question, and that is
Sure.
about the family conflicts. I was concerned that I might get sued by family for exposing some dirty laundry, or playing with the facts a little bit too much. And just so I changed all the names. I changed all the names. I mean, they know who they are, but I changed all the names so the average person would not maybe identify, who they were, and maybe they will. But I did change the names, and I took pains to make it very much a fictional account, with the understanding that I took many liberties to make the story much more dramatic than it might have been. So and I have a disclosure that this is, if it's loosely based on my grandfather's life. There's a lot of
Yeah.
it that you might think is actual his life. But even now, when people say, well, which part is that part true? I'll have to say, you know what? I don't remember. I don't know for sure. I've blurred the line so much that I'm not even sure which part of it is correct anymore. As far as research, that was the first part of your question. Yes,
Yes.
research.
Yes.
Research is something that I've done for forever as a journalist. You can't put things out there unless it's checked. So many more things can be checked online now, with the internet. It makes it so much easier than going back to a dictionary or looking things up in an encyclopedia or what have you.
Yeah.
But can you imagine what it was like? Hardly can't even imagine what it was like for me to have to research things and make sure my articles were correct. going to the libraries of the newspapers that I worked for, or going to a, I don't know what I did exactly. Somebody checked all this information to make sure that we put it out there accurately. So yes, I did take pains to make sure that everything I wrote was historically accurate, down to what they were, how they would speak at the time in the early 1900s, what they would wear, what was the culture, pop culture at the time. So many different little bits of information, like how would a man refer to a woman? Would it be a dame or a broad? Were either
Hmm.
one of those right?
Yeah.
And what would they have worn at the time? Those kind of little tidbits of facts that make it so much more authentic.
Okay. Great. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing. So,
Thank
how
you.
long did it take for you to actually complete the publication? What was the time frame, the time period?
So I was writing the novel while I was raising my children. So I guess I started soon after my daughter was born in 2000. And I had decided to stay home with my children at that point instead of working full time. And I was freelancing too. So I was building my freelance business and clientele per se. And then I was also writing this book. I was transcribing the tapes. I should step back and tell you that initially I listened to the tapes and wrote a column, I think in the 1990s, about listening to the tapes, and also um, I called it "My Grandfather Left a Piece of Himself Behind, a Legacy to His Progeny." So it started out as a column in the Atlanta Jewish Times, and then where I was working at the time as a reporter, and then I decided, after I realized I couldn't do it all as a mother and a writer, reporter full time. I stayed home so I can write this book and freelance. And so I transcribed the tapes. I researched. So your question was about how long it took me. I can only
Yeah.
tell you that I entered it for an Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award contest, um, uh, uh, in 7 years after I started writing it. So I'm not sure at what point it was done and what point it was ready. Edited and ready to be, put out there in a contest. Um, so I don't really know. It's been a long time. So because it was published 2 years ago, but I worked on it for 20 years to get a professional publisher. So
Wow.
2007, 2008, I entered that contest. 2009, I won I won a quarterfinalist. I was a quarterfinalist, and I knew then that, yeah, there's something here. And then I just kept pitching, and I wasn't going to settle until I had a publisher. I got a publisher, and then I lost my first publisher over some of the concerns that we talked about family and
Hmm.
suits. Nobody ever sued me, but I did have to find a new publisher because she was as fearful as I was, with cold feet at the last minute. So we took it to the finish line in 2022.
Wow. That must have been some journey for you.
It was
Ah,
some journey.
yeah,
Hmm.
but you stuck to the task and you were very resilient and you eventually came through. Now, this publication, Hands of Gold, won the 2023 International Book Awards for Multicultural Fiction and the 2023 Global Book Awards Gold Medal for Biographical Survival. It was a
Yes.
finalist in the 2024 American Legacy Awards for Multicultural Fiction, earning a 5-star rating in the 2023 Reader's Choice Book Awards. And there's so much more.
Mm.
But how did it impact upon the people that read the book? What was the feedback that you got? And congratulations on all the awards as well. They cannot be going unnoticed. But the people, the readers, the public, how did they respond to the publication?
So I think they liked it before, but I think any of the awards give it much more credibility.
Yes.
As a writer, it means you've gone through a process of selection and achieved something, to be on top, because there's lots of entrants to and people that enter this contest. So these contests. So yes, it did give it a lot of credibility. I think another aspect was that it was professionally published, as to why I went that route and took pains to do that and was very determined and persistent to do that. It helps if you're professionally published, in my opinion, to get that credibility behind you that says you didn't land in the garbage can, slush pile or whatever they call it. It's probably got a good new name now, but you made it to that point. And then I was around the time that I was also starting to win awards, 2022 American Fiction Awards for a finalist. I won also for Family Saga, and of course, way back in 2009, the Amazon Breakthrough Novel Award contest. But quarterfinalist for historical fiction. The I was also chosen to be in the Jewish Book Festival of the MJCCA, in Atlanta, the Jewish Book Festival, and along with people like Nikki Haley, heard of her?
Yes.
Had a recent run for president,
Yes.
and let's see, John Meacham,
Mm-hmm.
Bernie Marcus, Andrew Young, Benjamin Netanyahu. He's a little
Wow.
busy right now, but
Yes. Yes. Yes.
he was online, Zoom in, or live stream, I guess, just like this, to lead a program at that event. So many more: Jodi Picoult, um, uh, Michael Oren. There were so many big names that were at that event, and then me, little old me, and I got to be on the stage, a big stage that some of the other authors got to be on. So that was very much a plus for credibility, and people really regarded that highly. So all of these things, plus being on your podcast, I mean, when people hear that, my credibility is going to shoot up, right?
Yes, it will indeed. It will, it will, it will. Definitely, it will. So Ronnie, have you been involved in many book talks, being live before an audience and telling people from your personal perspective the stories about the book and the manner in which you have written it and how much it resonated with you, the research you had to do, but basically what you wanted them to get out of the story? Had you had that experience with the book talks and so on live before an audience?
Before the Jewish Book Festival. Um,
After.
oh, yes, yes. I speak all the time about my book.
Right.
So I've talked to senior centers. I've talked to educational organizations, women's groups, book clubs, synagogues. In various other groups, but those are probably some of the main ones that I've talked to about my book, and that can be in person or online, through Zoom or live stream. But yes, I've been in front of the crowd a bit. I've done some podcasting, some podcasts. I've been on podcasts, but it's still very new to me, to this format. But
You're
I'll
doing
tell you
fine.
what, I will tell you one little thing, and that is,
Sure.
I used to be a shy person. I
Hmm.
used to be very shy, and even the first time that I had a talk at my synagogue, I had to psych myself up and say, "This is your time." Basically, don't be nervous. It's very
Yeah,
hard not to
yeah,
be nervous every
yeah,
single
yeah,
time.
yeah. No, I will tell you a secret, Ronnie, and you might find this really hard to come to terms with or maybe even believe or accept. But the greatest speakers, the greatest orators would tell you every time they go before a stage, before a crowd of people, before a group of people to do a presentation or whatever they're doing, that little bit of anxiety will come. And it is not about being afraid, it's not about being fearful. It's just that the uncertainty of not knowing how people are going to receive you, how they are going to respond, is what makes you feel that way. But you have to focus on the moment. And what most of them would say is that if they didn't feel that little bit of anxiety, they know that something is wrong, because it is natural. It is humanly natural that when you go before a crowd of people, they don't know you, you don't know them. Some may know you, but intimately, personally, they don't. And so you're now beginning to forge a new relationship with that conversation. So it's like meeting someone for the first time. You put up all your barriers and they put up all their barriers. All you have to do is stay in the moment and breathe, relax, and remember that the opportunity is there before you to make an impression and an impact, and you just go with the flow. That's all. You don't have to be perfect. There's no set rules, there are guidelines, but there's no right way and wrong way to really do a presentation. It all depends on the audience that you're dealing with.
I love that,
Okay.
and thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Okay, so what advice, Ronnie, would you give to budding authors or writers in terms of the the role they should allow other people to play with regards to editing and publishing, and the commitment that they should have towards getting their publication out? What advice would you give to them?
The main thing is never give up, and don't let other people tell you that you're less than you are. Don't
Yes,
let other
yes.
people psych you out and indicate, oh, that's really hard to do. And I don't know, you're like one in 10,000 people make it. It's the chances of you making it in this industry are slim to none. Don't let anyone steal your dream. I heard that once in a convention that my husband goes to, very motivational um, uh, environment, and don't let anyone steal your dream. And I've adopted that because when you try 20 years to get a book published and you stick to your guns no matter what people tell you about your career. I've been told, yeah, you're not that great of a writer, or way back when, features is not your thing, maybe stick to hard news. People can tell you whatever you want, whatever they want, but it's in you to make that happen. So I would say just keep pushing towards the finish line, and really do research. Do check all the checks that need to be the check all the boxes that need to be checked as far as research, and then even after the book is published, there's so much more marketing that you have to do. I never realized.
Yeah,
You figure
yeah.
you're a good writer, you write a book, finally gets published, and then you're done. It's out there, but there's so much marketing. This is marketing. There's so much marketing that goes into it. Unless you want unless you have different goals, that you just want to have the story be for your family or for your friends, or uh, you know but that's not what I wanted. That's not what I wanted. That never was what I wanted. I like big audiences, so I want more people to read my book. So it's a never ending process of writing, rewriting, editing. That's all the same, probably. Getting people to read it,
Yeah.
getting
Yes,
people
yes.
to read it, doing your research, and then just plugging away, throwing spaghetti at the wall, as they say, with another cliche from Roni Robbins. But do what it takes, do whatever it takes, and don't give up on yourself.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for that response. Thank you for sharing. What would you say would be a philosophical thing for you with regards to writers? You mentioned some amazing people there, John Meacham and Benjamin Netanyahu. Um, with regards to your writing style and your writing format, would you say that there are any great authors or writers that you could recall that would have impacted upon your style, that you would have had them in mind at some point along the way and they would have made an impression upon you and the style in which you are currently involved in with regards to the writing that you have done and will continue to do?
So all I can tell you is that I have been told that my book is similar to A Fiddler on the Roof
Ah,
or The Notebook. And
yes.
so I would say that I've also been told that it has some similarities to the Joy Luck Club. Or I'm reading because this is I I like to write down these kind of things as far as when somebody asks me about other writers. Um, I have a whole list, but I don't know how much time we have left to talk about all the inspirations that I've had over the years. The Red Tent by Anita Diamond.
Uh-huh.
So I'll throw out a few of them that I've mentioned some. I would say James Michener, from way back, The Source.
Mm-hmm.
I've read so many authors. Water for Elephants. I mentioned the Joy Luck Club, Middlesex. These are the books I would say that inspired me. And some people have said that they bear resemblance to my book. So
Wow.
I don't know that
Yeah.
that answered your question, because I tend to read lately stories that are very similar to my own. And I've been reading. I have a bunch of cousins that are in the business, so I read their books. And so I don't want to mention names because there'd be too many. And there goes my sign.
Ah, yeah. Yeah. So what if any other stark differences between journalism, like you're working for a newspaper or a magazine, and the actual aspect of the writing that you do? Are there any similarities or differences, or basically they are two separate entities by themselves?
So I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Okay. What is the basic, let me keep it simple for you. What is the basic difference between day to day journalism, writing for a magazine or a newspaper, as opposed to what you have done writing for publishing a novel?
Right. So there are different rules, if that's what you mean. There are different rules as
Yeah,
far
yeah.
as there's the AP style book for journalism that you don't necessarily follow for writing a novel. And there are other differences. The main thing that I found going from journalism to writing a novel is that you you do this is a similarity. You do a lot of research, but the difference would be that you take an interview. In my case, an interview generally turns into a story, right? You interview somebody and you write their story, or you have a subject and you ask for their opinions on a story. Well, I had the cassette tapes, so I transcribed the cassette tapes, so that was the basis for the novel. So I did have an interview of sorts, and then I did go about and interview other family members. And I also, but I made up so much dialogue. That's the main difference, is the dialogue. I am not used to making up things that people say. I had to consider, what would they have said at that time? What would they have talked about? What would my grandfather have said to my grandmother? What about those
Mm,
private moments? What would they have talked about?
yeah,
How would they have talked
yeah,
about sex per se?
yeah.
What exactly was going on? How would people talk to each other? I'm not used to making up stuff. I know that people accuse the media of making up things, but we really don't. And unless you're writing an opinion piece, you don't get to say what's on your mind either. You stick to the
Ah,
facts. So
yes.
in this case, maybe if I was writing a nonfiction book, it would be sticking to the facts. But since I didn't stick to the facts, that was the challenge, was making up things. Making up lines of dialogue was
Yeah,
the
but
biggest
that
challenge for me.
and that must have taken you back to the school days that you spoke about in the early. Yeah? Somehow. Mm.
So, I did take some writing classes in college, and I did learn about, writing in this long form way, whether it's short stories or long form. But I did study this. Not that that matters anything so many years later when I'm writing my novel, but I don't know. I have an imagination. You have to have an imagination. You have to pretend. You have to
Uh,
put yourself in the mindset of your characters, and then who's going to know the difference, right? You make
mm.
up the lines. You don't know if I'm right or wrong. You don't know if
Yeah,
they
yeah,
said that or not.
yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I appreciate that, Ronnie. Thank you for sharing. How much did you learn more about yourself and your family having to do all this research? Was it enlightening for you?
Definitely enlightening. I mean, I grew up with my grandparents, I grew up with my family, but delving deeper into the time period and what they went through was well, no, we knew that there was something that they weren't telling us because they also spoke in Yiddish when they didn't want us to know what was going on. But we knew because we had asked my grandfather, most of my grandfather, to share their stories, and we knew that the Holocaust had happened. I didn't realize the extent of how it impacted that those families. I mean, they lost all of their relatives in the Holocaust, but they were here. So, what is that like to learn about that when you're here? All your family is from a different country and they're gone. What do you mean they're gone? They're gone. Some crazy lunatic is in charge and he decides that people are less than
Mm-hmm.
the master
Yeah.
race,
Yeah.
or whatever it is, and I'm sure that you can relate to this.
Yes.
We if you look different, if you're just different, if you practice a different religion, somehow or another, you're not right, you're not the
Mm.
same, you're less than. Uh-uh.
Mm.
So, but this is what happened in the world. What some people don't believe it did, but it did, and their whole family is wiped out. So I learned so much about that. I learned about my grandfather's saving people in a workplace shooting. I just didn't. You don't know your grandparents really. You don't know. You don't really. I don't even think you know your parents and the lives that they had before you. My son is always interested to learn to go back to the future and be back there with and be in the dating between me and my husband or something.
Mm. Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
So I I did learn a lot more than I knew
Mm.
from growing up with my grandparents. It
Yeah.
was
Thank you.
enlightening.
So, Ronnie, if you had the opportunity to speak to almost 8 billion people in the world, roughly the population right now, and it was a message that you had to say to them, something that you know they would remember, coming from your heart, and you don't want them to forget, what would you say to them?
Love each other. Stop hating. Yeah, stop hating. Just ridiculous. Just ridiculous philosophies of who's right and who's wrong, and who's better and who's worse, and why can't we just be all equal? Why?
Mm,
I God created us all in the same image. I don't know, he created us a little bit different from each other. What is so wrong with that?
yeah, yeah. What is so wrong with that, indeed? Wow. So we have come to the end of this amazing episode with Roni Robbins, but now I want to give you the opportunity to put some information up there. I don't know which one you'd want them to make contact with you through if they want to hear from you, and also how they can get a copy of your publication, Hands of Gold.
Those are great. Contact information is just fine with me. And you know My book is available at Amazon and anywhere where you buy books. So Walmart, Books a Million, Barnes and Noble. It may be in your local Barnes and Noble, and if it's not, or in your local library, ask for it, and they might bring it there. That's what I've been told. So, uh, wherever you shop for books, take a look and shop for Hands of Gold, and get Hands of Gold in your own golden hands, is what I like to say. Get your hands on Hands of Gold.
Yes, yes, yes.
So so and bless your hands also. I like to tell people, bless your golden hands. So they work hard. They show your life story in your hands, I always feel. And please support any authors. Please support the creative talents of
Yeah,
of our American citizens, global citizens. Everyone's got a story to tell. So maybe
yes.
you'll read mine and find some relevance to your own life in it, and let me know.
That's wonderful. That is truly wonderful. On that note, we have come to the end of this podcast episode on Let's Just Read, entitled Turning Family History into a Novel with Roni Robbins. Hands of Gold. Go out on Amazon and get a copy of that book. As she said, it could bring some level of personal value and resonate with her story as much as she's have it out there. And she wants us to get the message that we need to be on the same page with love, because we were all created in the image of God. Maybe a little different color here, different hair strand there, but hey, what's the difference really? It makes not much of a difference. We are all humans and we all entitled the opportunity to be here. So until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development, together with my guest, Roni Robbins, on Let's Just Read, saying so long, Godspeed, Shalom, Namaste. Bye for now, guys. Until next time, stay blessed. Here we go.
Check out Andy's Personal Development Podcast, available today on your favorite podcast platform. Andy's Personal Development Podcast.